All right, thank you. Welcome back, everyone. It is my pleasure to be welcoming on stage Cheetah Conservation Botswana, and we have two speakers. Our first speaker will be Jane Horgan. She is the Engagement and Awareness Coordinator, and she has a bachelor's in wildlife biology and zoology from University of Queensland. Apart from her work at Cheetah Conservation, she has also got experience with conservation projects from different animals like brown hyenas, vultures, Tasmanian devils, and the flying foxes. The other speaker that she's with is Oshabile Baheto-Leng. She is a PhD student, and she joined the Cheetah Conservation in 2015 as a volunteer. And she is a PhD student in human-wildlife coexistence. So please join me welcoming Oshabile and Jane.
Thank you, my love. I've got... Hello, everybody.
Hello, Jane.
Dumeleng. Goeiemiddag. Heyo. And g'day. Yes, I am Australian, but I am here to talk to you about cheetahs in Botswana. It's a little bit confusing, I understand. But I started at Cheetah Conservation Botswana way back in 2009, and CCB was only 5 years old at the time. And I went for a 2-month placement as a research assistant and ended up staying for 12 years. Unfortunately, sadly, I'm not sure what the word really is, I actually moved back to Australia last year in May. And that has been a really big adjustment for me and my family. But thankfully, there's plenty to do at CCB, plenty to do remotely. So I have been still busy working for CCB. And I now just cluster all of my field work into one big pile and then go into the field once a year. And I was lucky enough to get back to Botswana in July this year for the first time since we moved to Australia. And it was so nice to be back. I had to leave these guys behind. These are my two kids. This is Ava and Jake. And as you can see, Ava didn't handle it very well. Jake only did because while I was away, he was promised that he could have ice cream for breakfast. So he was totally fine with the whole situation. But it was so great to be back and to see the bush and the project and family and friends, and of course Rebecca and the CCB team, who are my family and friends after all of these years. And it was just absolutely spectacular. Though I did go in July, which of course in the Southern Hemisphere is a little bit chilly. And it was, freezing temperatures. Thankfully, I had all of the PPE I needed, my beanie. I had 3 hot water bottles. But luckily, I got to stay in, some really sturdy, well-insulated accommodation. This was my tent for my 5 weeks in the bush. So it was freezing at night, and it was super hot in the middle of the day, but that's what the Kalahari is. It's desert, it's super hot, it gets super cold. But the reason I was in the tent was because CCB has grown so much in all of these years, these 18, 19 years we've been around, that we have now overgrown our Hansi field camp. This is our current camp at the moment, but the good news is, and the exciting news I have to report, is that just in the last few weeks we've finalised the purchase of our first farm. So we now have our very own farm in the Kalahari. This is the team visiting the farm for the first time in July. We were so excited. And so in the next 18 months, we're going to be moving our whole camp over to this new location. In a similar area, it's prime cheetah habitat, beautiful area. And thanks to a bequest by a lovely lady called Peggy Thorne, we will be able to build the accommodation for our staff there. And we will be building a whole new cheetah rehabilitation pen, our demonstration farm, livestock guarding dog training facility, and a whole new education centre. So we're very, very excited about that development. But for me to go back into the bush in July was great because that's my happy place. And I was so lucky because this trip, unexpectedly, we caught cheetahs. And that's not something that we do very often, so I was very, very lucky to do that. Don't worry, that cheetah can breathe properly. He was just half waking up. That's why we put that over his head so he wouldn't eat us. But just to give you guys a little bit of context, For those of you who don't know Botswana that well, Botswana is the most beautiful country in the world. I'm a little bit biased, but it's largely made up of the Kalahari Desert, which is a semi-arid desert. It's not a classic desert, and it's full of wildlife, beautiful wildlife, and it is just the best place for cheetahs. So this is the cheetah range map, and as you can see, there's Botswana down at the bottom. We're just north of South Africa. And Botswana has the most cheetahs out of any country in the world. And strategically, we're in a really good position there because we link several other countries and their cheetah populations. So that's why we love cheetahs so much and we work so hard to protect them. And we work largely in the western side of Botswana, which is where there are the most cheetahs in Botswana. Oh, and I forgot to mention, between us and Namibia, our friends in Namibia, we have 45% of the world's cheetahs just in those two countries. So it's an incredibly important population of cheetahs there. So we work in the western side of Botswana, not only lots of cheetahs, but also lots of livestock. And 77% of Botswana's cheetahs live outside of protected areas. So managing that overlap between the livestock, the farmers, and the wildlife is super important. And part of this work in managing those relationships was for us to put these research collars on these cheetahs to see what was going on and the dynamics that were going on there. So we actually were working with a farm that was 120,000 hectares. It was the biggest collection of farms in this Huntsy farming area, which is a hotspot for conflict. And we ended up having 3 traps set on this farm. And the only reason that and they're humane cage traps, so we set these traps so that we can put the research collars on these animals. And this farmer that was on this farm actually helped us set the traps. And this was a really cool little development that I wanted to share with you because this was a trap setup that he did back in 2008 at this cheetah marking tree. You can see the poop on the tree if you look really closely. And he used to set traps for cheetahs there because of conflict. And a lot of those cheetahs that he caught there were killed. And he admitted to me once that he actually caught 30 cheetahs at this one tree in the space of 2 months. Yeah, so an incredible amount of cheetahs that he caught there and that were destroyed because of conflict. Fast forward now, this year, July, he was setting the traps for us so that we could catch cheetahs for research, for our conservation efforts. And that just makes me super happy. And because of his incredible skill at catching cheetahs, we were actually able to catch on our very first day of the traps being open. Keep in mind, we had not caught any cheetahs. We'd been trying to put 6 collars on, and it had taken us over a year. So we were trying, the traps were open, it was taking us forever. And this guy sets a trap first day, this cheetah. Second day, second cheetah, same farm. The 5th day, cheetah number 3, put the last collar on, done. Project done, 5 days. Unbelievable, we were so happy. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about this cheetah. This was a pretty special cheetah. Do any of you guys remember Brits? He came and he spoke at the Spring Expo, yeah. Brits is our education and community officer. This was the first cheetah. He's been with us now for like 5 years. And this was the first cheetah that he'd ever seen up and close and personal. And he was so excited. Look at the smile. I mean, he was so excited. And it was just infectious, like his excitement just, washed over all of us. And so we let him name this cheetah, and he decided to call it Ashton after a little boy that's very special to his heart. And so I wanted to tell you Ashton's story. Ashton ended up moving off that farm. The first 2 cheetahs that we caught on that farm were holding the territory, and there was also a female on that farm as well. And so he quickly moved off, and he went about 20 miles to the southwest of that farm and settled in that area. Beautiful, beautiful farm, nice big pan. And we were keeping an eye on all of his movements, and he was moving around pretty well. And then suddenly his GPS points stopped. And that always worries us because in this conflict hotspot, a cheetah whose GPS points stop moving means that that's probably a dead cheetah. But thankfully, in this situation, he wasn't dead. We got a call from the Department of Wildlife. No, there's a farmer's caught a cheetah. Because of conflict, we're going to move it into the Central Kalahari Game Reserve. I went, okay, well, let's just call this farmer. We know most of the farmers in this area. Let's just call him and find out what's going on. We called, and the farmer's wife admitted that, well, actually they had set traps. but not the usual traps that they set, like this one, not a cage trap. They had actually, she admitted, set a gin trap, which is like the bear traps. Quite common in South Africa, not that common in Botswana. And honestly, when I heard this, Olivier was talking this morning about those bad days that you have in conservation. This was one of my bad days, because these were farmers I had worked with, and I felt like I had failed, that they were using these traps. And this cheetah was badly injured. So we brought the cheetah to our rehabilitation facility. We got the vets in. They treated him. Thankfully, like miraculously, he didn't have any major damage to his paw. So his bones were all intact. All of his tendons were intact. It was just superficial lacerations. And so he was given 2 courses of long-lasting antibiotics, and then he was very quickly moved into the Central Kalahari Game Reserve. And because he already had that GPS collar on, we could keep an eye on his movements. So he was moved to Matopi Pan in the north of the Central Kalahari Game Reserve. Beautiful area, lots of game. And he did spend a couple of days resting up. Understandable when you still have a bit of a sore paw, right? But then he started moving, and he moved quite far to the south, and he was moving long distances, so we were really excited that he was doing well and he would be okay. And I was all ready to come with really great news about this lovely story of hope and survival. And unfortunately, this is the world of conservation, and it's not all rainbows and sunshine and happiness, because when I was actually in the air flying here, there was a big delay in the GPS points coming through, which just kind of happens because of the way the satellites work. And when I arrived, and we had 3 people checking these points, so we were all over it, but when I arrived, a big dump of these GPS points came, and they were all in the same spot. And so the team, our research team, mobilized immediately to go out and find him. Unfortunately, because Botswana is such a huge, huge country in such vast areas, and the Central Kalahari is the middle of nowhere, it took them a whole day to get there. And by the time they got there, he had passed away. But there are still silver linings to this story, thankfully, because there always has to be. You have to hold on to them in the conservation world, always. So you go back to the farmer. Now, a lot of our work that we do is with the farmers, because they hold the key to the survival of cheetahs. And we worked with this farmer, we sent our team out there, we worked on their farm management, we improved their corral where they were putting their livestock, and we deployed 2 different types of predator deterrence on the corral where they had been having problems. They had lost 19 sheep on that farm in a very short period of time. And usually what we do when we have conflicts like this with the farmers is that we give them one of these cute little guys. Many of you guys will know that we have our livestock guarding dog project. We use the local Swana dogs for our livestock guarding dog project. And these guys are trained to protect herds of livestock. They are then placed with farmers experiencing conflict, and then the farmers don't have to go and shoot cheetahs anymore because the dogs are protecting their herds. Wonderful win-win scenario. Usually we place between 50 and 75 livestock guarding dogs every year through our training facility that we have at our farm. This year, and these are 2 of the puppies that I met in July, these guys and 20 other puppies that we had at our facility this year have passed away because there's been a parvovirus outbreak in the whole country. Thankfully, though, we actually had expanded our projects to include our 3 model farmers. This is Jeffrey Moyo, one of our model farmers, and they've basically got puppy training franchises now. So thankfully, they haven't been as badly affected by the parvovirus outbreak. So we have still been able to place livestock guarding dogs thanks to these guys and thanks to us scaling up. So thanks to all those interventions, this farmer has since removed every single gin trap from their farm. And since that, they haven't had any livestock losses since our intervention. So there's the silver lining that we've had from that. Now, CCB was built upon the concept of helping farmers to coexist with cheetahs and the research that's involved and our education work that's involved. But our latest project is our Communities for Conservation project, which focuses in on the wildlife management areas that stretch between the central Kalahari Game Reserve and the Kalahari Transfrontier Park in the southwest of Botswana. And this is a beautiful wildlife area, but it's not a wildlife corridor in the classic sense, because there are people living in this corridor. And we're developing a lot of exciting programs, one of which my colleague Otsibile is going to talk to you about. Otsibile is our first local PhD student. And yeah, right? We're so excited to have her on board. Otsibile is born and bred in Francistown in Botswana, and then she did her undergraduate and her master's degrees in London. Her name in Setswana means the girl who runs away. She is now in Texas at the Texas A&M University starting her PhD, and it is an absolute honor to invite her to the stage. Otsibile Behetele.
Hello all. Thank you, Jane. And I'm here just to explain to you all how I've ended up not really running away, but running after after the wildlife and the nature and the conservation. And it all started with this Mopani caterpillars. Zoe is nodding, and others from Zimbabwe will agree with me as well. So Mopani caterpillars are a delicacy in our part of the world. They are the caterpillar stage of the Gonimbrasia bellina moth. And when it comes December and early January time and the rain season starts, families go out camping. We go out with our mothers and the ladies from the neighborhoods with their children, and we go out camping in the Mopani woodlands, and we collect it. And rain might fall on us, we'll be with the birds, we'll be among the trees. It feels like freedom, especially for some of us who grow up in townships and we don't own big land, we don't own farms. But at this time, we get to be in places where it is free to roam, and you're just experiencing freedom, and you fall in love with nature and natural spaces. So from my childhood, I grew up doing this activity, and I developed a love for nature. I also grew up with an understanding that from nature, we get our livelihood. This is Mopani worm once it's been boiled and dried up, and we collect it and fill up big sacks of this stuff, and we sell to farmers who then grind it and create a supplement feed for their livestock. And then from that money, when I was a child, my mother would buy us school uniforms, pens and books and pencils, and by January we'd be ready for school. So I grew up understanding that livelihood comes from nature. As I was going through life, going through school, different levels of school, I started to realize that actually these things are not exhaustible like I had thought before, and a lot of nature is in peril. And even the Mopani worms themselves could run out at some point. So I determined that since I enjoy nature that much, I want to go into conservation for my life's work. And so this is what I do now. I go out in these bakkies. I spend a whole day in a bakkie doing research work. My reward is to be out there. But my responsibility is to pass on the opportunities that have been granted to me to other people in the community, to people like these children who in future might get the opportunity to end up here, to end up in spaces like this, benefiting themselves, their communities, and their environment. I am now with CCB and with Texas A&M University as part of a large group doing research on understanding human-wildlife conflict and supporting coexistence. And the reason why I have to be here is to be a live demonstration that connections are being made from your contributions to Jane's work, to local people. It's trickling down even to a female local person doing a PhD at Texas A&M University. And it's gonna trickle down to these kids. I'm there in the picture with them, and that's my professor, Dr. Thomas Schretner. And they are bringing these benefits to me, to the rest of them, and down to the wildlife and to the rest of the environment. CCB is really doing the work to include everyone and to include the whole ecosystem. Thank you very much.
So it's not just about cheetahs. Cheetah Conservation Botswana, it's a bit of a furphy. So we're dealing with whole ecosystems. It's not just the large carnivore guilds, and I hate to say it, but we do work with lions a bit. Pains me to say no. And all of the herbivores and the felt and the livestock and the people. The people are such an integral part of it. They're not the easiest to work with. They make it very complicated. But this is where the biggest impacts lie. This is where the biggest change happens. And whether it's your, small-scale subsistence cattle post farmer, reinforcing his kraal or getting livestock guarding dogs, or if it's your commercial ranchers who are improving their farm management or removing the gin traps from their farm, whether it's me working remotely or whether it's, us starting new programs with communities and livelihood diversification, it's change. If there's anything that we've learnt from this pandemic, I think it's that we're all capable of change and adapting. And when we all make little changes for the benefit of this beautiful planet we're on, that's when we really start to make a huge difference in this world. And I'm here on behalf of Rebecca and the whole CCB team on the ground, and we couldn't do any of this work if it wasn't for WCN. And they took us on board when we were a fledgling organization, and they mean everything to us. So for all of the WCN staff that are here, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you so much. For you guys that support WCN, you are WCN. And our gratitude is ginormous. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jane and Oshabile. We'll now open the floor for just a few questions before we get into the next amazing speakers.
Jane, how many cheetahs are within your group, and overall, how many cheetahs do we have?
So the last good count is a little old now, to be honest. It was 2015. The years fly by, don't they? So that was worldwide 7,100 for the whole planet. Botswana, the highest population at the last count, about 1,700. 1,694 was the estimate for Botswana. Yeah. So our population in Botswana has been relatively stable, whereas the other populations elsewhere, some of them are crashing very fast.
So how do you coordinate work with Laurie Marker in India?
We are friends, neighbors, obviously, right side by side, and holding that super important population, under our umbrellas. We are friends, but separate organizations. Yeah.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
Do you see any of the same animal trafficking issues that Laurie is
Yeah, so, I mean, we do our work in Botswana, and I think I was talking to Laurie about it just yesterday. I think that a lot of that trade that's going into Somaliland and through Somaliland is coming from East Africa. But we do see in the south of Botswana in particular a movement of cheetahs across the border into South Africa. So from Botswana into South Africa. And that's largely for the live trade. But we think those cheetahs are staying in roadside zoos and in the zoo industry in South Africa is what we think. But I know Laurie is trying to get to the bottom of where those cheetahs are coming from, and we have offered all of our genetics samples from Botswana to see if they will line up with the animals that she's getting through their facility there. Because, yeah, at the end of the day, we're trying to save the species. Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. So many cheetahs in so few days. I think all three of them were in really good condition. I think they were all sort of in that the prime of their life, 3 to 6 years of age. Yeah, so quite young. I've been with CCB now 13 years, 14 years, something like that. We have caught quite a number of cheetah. I think I've probably been involved in at least like 15 or 20 cheetahs that we've had, and I haven't seen one that's over 8 years of age. They should live like 10 to 12 years. Really in the wild, but you just don't see old ones that often. Yeah.
Hi, my question's for Chabili. Did I get that right?
Yes.
I wanted to find out what's your family's response to you actually running away and then perhaps coming back. No, but I mean, like, what kind of support are you getting? Again, you just said, you're a girl going to get her PhD. What's the community and family support like?
Yes. So the first family reaction was to me wanting to study ecology and conservation. Oh. Why not medicine? At least be a teacher. Why not law? But I love nature. Let me be like when you're watching Net Geo and the speaker, they show somebody on TV and that tag says ecologist. I said, I want to be an ecologist. Let me do that. They were concerned. But to me, going abroad, they said, at least she gets to go abroad. Now that they are proud of. And I get my independence. I don't bring them trouble. I enjoy what
For now, she is in Texas. So.
That they know of. Yeah. And they're coming on board slowly but surely. And my stories, they just get concerned sometimes when I say I camp among lions and hyenas and all that. But they're coming on board. Yes.
To be fair, my dad had a similar reaction. I told him I wanted to be a wildlife biologist. Yeah.
All right, unless there's a burning question, thank you so much. But before you leave, while you were standing there, I was just wondering how flexible your arms were when you put them at the back. It would be a nice stretch exercise for all of us, maybe before we move on to the... You see when she turns around? She's like, yeah, I know.
I hide them away not to show my nervousness.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, now to introduce the next speakers will be the lovely Curly to do that.
Good afternoon, everyone. Oh. Thank you all for being here for our last session of the day. So I know it's a long day, but I appreciate you hanging in, and I appreciate you still being here. And I know even more than me, Peter and David appreciate you sticking around and being here. So I have had the fortunate opportunity to see painted dogs in the wild. And the first time was about a year before I met Painted Dog Conservation. So I didn't really know what I was looking at or what I was seeing. I came back, I came to Expo, I heard Peter's presentation, and I went, oh, Now they are one of my absolute favorite animals. And I just think their social structures are incredible. And I think these gentlemen to my right over here are doing incredible things to protect them. PDC's work within the community is unparalleled. Their education programs are one of the ones I point people to when they say, what are conservationists doing for kids? So check out PDC's Bush Camp. With that, I would like to introduce Peter Blinston and David Kuvoga to talk about their work with the communities and with the dogs in Zimbabwe.
Is it just me? Is it cold in here? All right. I've been cold all week. So, yeah, thanks for still being here at the end of the day in this cold room. You've heard a lot today, and I think these last few days, last night, about inspiration, what inspires us, what motivates us to do what we do. 50 years ago, I was watching Jane Goodall on TV with the documentary Solo, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. 40 years ago, I wrote to Ian Douglas Hamilton, he's talking upstairs, I think, which is quite ironic. Wrote him a letter, just inspired by the work he was doing, watching him on Nat Geo and all those documentaries on TV. And he wrote back, and I've still got the letter. You know, so there's that was like really emotional last night, watching those two old doppies up there talking and drinking their whiskey, and that was pretty cool. But an organisation like Painted Dog Conservation is not about any one individual. It's not about me. It's not about any one individual. You are all part of Painted Dog Conservation. You're part of our team. In Zimbabwe, we've got 66 staff. Local staff, literally local, like many of the projects, the organisations you've heard today, from the villages that surround us where we work. And that is so critical. That is the future. That investment in building capacity in local communities is a key, critical strategy that we have towards our long-term success goals. And this guy grew up in Wangi National Park. He was literally born into conservation. His father was a warden. They've got different titles now, but the warden, he was one of the senior officers in Wangi National Park and moved all around Zimbabwe. I mean, David was destined to be where he is today. And he is the leader. He is the guy on the ground running PDC on a day-to-day basis. I just shout at him every now and again. He's a very, very determined guy, as this will show you recently. Where's the volume? Running the London Marathon last Sunday. And as you can see, he's not like an Ethiopian long-distance marathon runner, but it's an indication of the strength and determination of the character. And I'll hand over to David now to tell you about the work that we're doing in Zimbabwe with your support. There you go, man.
Thank you, Peter. Yeah, I'll continue working out. Point taken. Yeah, indeed. Just, we're celebrating 20 years for WCN. I also like to highlight right now that this year it's been 25 years since Peter has been with PDC and Painted Dogs, and we've been learning a lot from him, and has been indeed a great visionary leader. So I thank you, Peter. Talking of marathons, if there is an animal, I chose to be in the London Marathon, but Painted Dogs have not chosen to be in the race of extinction that they are in. As we speak, there is less than 7,000 painted dogs left in the wild. And painted dog conservation's vision is to make sure that we create that conducive environment where the painted dogs can thrive. And in that, our mission is to make sure that we increase the numbers and range of painted dogs. But some will ask, where are we where we do this stuff? We are situated in Hwange National Park in Zimbabwe, as you can see there, and our work is also up in Manapus. When you come to Zimbabwe, you'll find me in Hwange there. That's where we are headquartered, and also that's where I stay with my family. Now, this animal, the painted dog, is a beautiful animal. Kelly talked about its social structure, and that usually attracts most people to it. Painted dogs live in packs. They are led by an alpha female. They take care of their pups cooperatively. And when one is injured, they take care of it. There's such organization about them that really attracts most of us to them, especially some of us that have the privilege to really see them in the wild. When there is a kill, it's not chaos when it's time to go feed. Like probably I started to see a bit when we're having the lunch breaks there. There's order to it. They think about the next dog. They think about their pups. They think about that injured dog that they've left at the den. They feed, and then they go back and regurgitate that food to it so that it can heal. Because as you see, it's all about numbers with painted dogs. They know that the other dog is equally important in this pack for the general survival of the pack itself. So the sooner that dog heals, the sooner it can join the pack, and then the sooner it can also join in their hands. Painted dogs are quite playful. There's a lot of playing in the structure so that it enhances the bond that they need in order for them to be successful in the wild. So there's a lot of this playing. There's a lot of sounds that they also make. It could be before a hunt or indeed after a kill is made. There's a lot of chattering and that happens, and they connect in that way. A lot of wagging of tails, that also happen. That also happens. A lot of submissions, that also happen to make sure that the structure is kept, because that order is important to maintain the pack. So it's quite something to watch, really, when you get an opportunity to visit and you're out there in the bush and you observe. Painted dogs are not related at all to our chihuahuas at home. They, deviated in the evolutionary line, and they are a species of its own, which is also quite unique, because that gives them that biological significance in terms of making sure that we protect them even further. They might have these mannerisms like our chihuahuas at home, as you can see there. They scratch, they play, they make these sounds like our dogs, but they're indeed not like our domestic dogs. Some confuse them, of course, with hyenas, but as you can see, there's no resemblance there. On the left, obvious, is the beautiful painted dog, and then on the right you have the hyena. They are not even friends. When hyenas actually do what is called kleptoparasitism, they follow painted dogs. When they have the cues, they try to get the food away from the dogs. But like I said, numbers are everything to dogs. So they know if the pack is huge, they are able to defend their cues from hyenas, as you can see there. There's also a myth that is associated with dogs, that they are wanton killers. They will kill on sight. They will kill everything. But as you can see there, for sure, they are really interested in those impalas in the far end, are they? No. So they will only take what they need from as far as hunting is concerned. So that myth is wrong. But this beautiful animal, why are we here? We know panda dogs are endangered. We're here because the numbers dwindled in the last 100 years. Their range was almost across all Africa, except, of course, in the DRC and most of Northern Africa. But they went most in Southern Africa, East Africa, and a lot of countries in the middle there. But now in 2022, if you look at the ranges, they've disappeared in most of the areas. Through a lot of research, we have come to understand what these threats have been through our teams. Some of you would know that face. So, roadkills and loss of quality habitat really has been, again, one of those big threats to painted dogs that caused this decline. There was also a historical historically, they also had put a bounty on painted dogs, that if you kill a painted dog, you can bring the tail and you'll be paid. This was during the time when a lot of farming was starting to happen in Africa for cattle ranching. And once you kill a painted dog, you could be paid for it. So a lot of numbers went down during that time. There's also rabies and canine distemper. This has been talked about during the day as well. This has affected a lot of other packs also in the areas that we work. But the huge threat has been snares, wire traps. We have collected over 50,000 of these traps since inception. And on average, each trap is about 2 meters. And if we work that out, talking about marathons, if you join those, it's about running 3 of those marathons. And those are the number of traps that we have removed in terms of the length. We do this, obviously, through putting boots on the ground. This is the immediate threat to dogs, and we have to do something about it. So we have teams that are on the ground so that we can remove these deadly traps. You can see how heinous it is when it gets to the dogs. The boots on the ground are the only way that we can protect immediately painted dogs, to make sure that we remove the threat immediately. We have been joined by communities in doing this work, which is important. Because again, for long-term sustenance, we need to have these communities as part of the solution. So we have over 250 community anti-poaching units that are around the areas that we work, that join us, and we go on patrol and we continue to remove these traps. Our interventions also include treating the injured dogs on the ground. We treat them in situ, where they have been injured, and release them if it's not necessary that we bring them to our rehabilitation facilities. But if it's necessary, we bring them to the rehab facility. And to date, we have rehabilitated over 85 painted dogs through the facility that we have released into the wild. The importance of this intervention is such that I'll tell you, we took in a dog, Vusile, and we took care of her. She was a bit more nourished, and we released back into the wild. And we can track 137 dogs from that intervention and descendants of Vusile. So we are there to make sure that where pendant dogs need our help as humans who intervene, whether it is, some argue that if it's a natural injury in the wild, we should not intervene. But we go in and we intervene wherever it's necessary. Because as humans, we have put our hand in this disaster already. So it is upon us that we fix what we started. But our work is not just protecting pendant dogs. The snares we remove are a danger to many other species. As you can see there, that's a guinea fowl, which is caught in a trap. As you can see there, that's a hyena that had been caught in a trap. Our guys on the ground have been involved with recovering elephant ivory, and we are there in this landscape supporting all these systems. There we were decontaminating a cyanide site. Some of you would have heard that most elephants at some point were killed because of the use of cyanide by poachers. Our teams, they are there in the field, we are removing snares, we are protecting ground, but we come across this, we don't turn a blind eye to it. We involve the necessary authorities and they come and they help. So our impact on the ground is extended because we are there on the ground.
Oh, was that those? Thank you, thank you.
There you go. That's another animal saved. So every day we are on the ground removing these traps, making sure that the landscape is clean, the habitat retains its quality for not only pendant dogs to thrive, but also animals which are prey to pendant dogs. So that's what the anti-poaching team is doing on the ground. But now for the future, you know, we have to look at the future and how we are going to secure it. These are the immediate things that we are doing with the anti-poaching work. I'll ask you, the level of awareness that is needed for people to view the world differently has to involve a lot of education. And that's something that we do. So where you see a beautiful impala, someone is seeing a nice fatty impala for the pot. Where you're seeing a beautiful tree, someone is seeing a nice log for the fire by the end of the day. So our role, we feel, is also to go and educate and do a lot of awareness in the communities to make sure that the perspective, how we view things, is aligned so that we can achieve our goals. And to do this, indeed, we have the Iganyana Children's Bush Camp, where we bring in 21 local primary schools for a 4-day camp, and they're immersed in conservation education, making sure that they understand the ecosystem, they understand the environment where they live, they understand the importance of protecting wildlife. We introduce them to botany, we introduce them to zoology and understanding the ecosystem as it should function and how they can be involved in the future. They also have time to be just kids and play. And at the end of the day, this is really a great time that they have at our camp. They have an opportunity, indeed, to go into the park and experience wildlife in a positive manner. You must understand that most of the time, these kids have experienced an interaction with wildlife before they come to the camp has been a negative experience. The lions have gone into their crow and eaten their cow. The elephants have gone into their fields and eaten the few crops that they have. So this is what's in their mind. And at this stage, when they come to camp and we take them into the park, they get to experience this positively with wildlife. And this gets to really change the way that they view the world. Now, what has happened to some of the kids that come to our camp? We have Munashe there. He came to camp and is now enrolled in university and is now focusing on doing rangeland management. He has gone into conservation. We have Survivor, who is now a radio personality, came to the bush camp and he has got Nature is Life as one of the programs that he does on radio. So this is something that they picked when they came to the bush camp and they've carried with them to date. We also have this generational cycle that we have experienced where the kids that came to our bush camp when it started, they now have their own children that they've started now to also come to the bush camp. So we now have in a community a mother and a daughter or a son that have both been to the bush camp. Thus, we are creating this natural buffer of protection in the communities of people that understand the work that we do. A community that will have environmentally conscious citizens that can make better decisions about conservation. Now, issues of conservation are too huge. Even the protection of painted dogs is too huge for individuals or one organization to do. We understand that partnerships and collaborations are important. We understand that too well, that we are involved with tour operators, local communities, the Zimbabwe National Parks Forestry Commission, to name but a few. These are organizations that really come in and together we are able to attain that vision that we want. But you can see at the top there, you are part of that network, you are part of that partnership and collaboration. Because without funding, without the finance and the support, the emotional that you give us, it will be difficult really for us to be out there and to do what we do day in and day out. But at local level, the community is one of our biggest partners. The local leadership, traditional leaders. This is our local traditional leader, Chief Nelikova, an advocate for painted dogs. These are the people that will make sure that the future is secured. These are the people that will make sure that the work that we do does not end because communities will be involved and they are part of the conservation program. We have local authorities that are part of this partnership. They're equally important and they also come on board. We do have our national parks colleagues that also are part of our awareness and campaigns that we do, and they help us greatly making sure that whatever we do, they are also there, and then we are moving in one direction instead of one pulling one way and the other pulling the other way. We are involved in these communities. We engage them. We are there. We want to understand what their concerns are. We want to understand where they want to take this organization to. How can it benefit them? How can it help to create that conducive environment where painted dogs can thrive? And to date, we believe that through 18 years of being a partner with WCN and over 20 years of the organization being there, we've managed to create that environment where painted dogs can thrive due to the interventions of our anti-poaching work, due to our education and awareness programs, and the involvement of many partners, communities, funders, and indeed the authorities, National Parks and Forestry Commission. The biggest partner, which is WCN, has really been helpful in making sure that we improve our own capacity as an organization. They've helped us to link ourselves and you so that we can drive this organization forward. And on their 20 years anniversary, we would also like Expanded Dog Conservation to say congratulations. We thank you for all the support, and that is much appreciated. I thank you.
Thanks, David.
Is it? What is that? It's a gorilla.
Yeah, it's a gorilla.
Put the dog.
So we have time for a few questions. Anyone? Questions for Peter?
Peter, weren't you one of the founders of Painted Dogs?
I was.
That's what I thought. But I also had a question. You talked about the traps. Now, were the traps set for some other animal than the painted dogs, but they become a victim?
True. Yes. So the wire traps are set for antelope. That's your kudu, your impala, and painted dogs are just bycatch. They are not set for them. True, yes.
What was, before was another question, what was, just finishing off what David said there, what was really interesting and very significant for us this year is those of you who follow our sort of roller coaster journey maybe more closely, you know about we had to capture this pack of dogs from communal land we did it twice. I think, was it 2017 we did it, and then we brought them to our rehab and we released them and they went back and we had to capture them again and we took them to minor pools and they ended up in community. And we had to capture them again, bring them back to Wangi, what was left of them, and again we released them. And we knew there was going to be an issue when we released them because they were they were habitual livestock killers, and we had to argue quite strongly with national parks who said, just take them, just dump them in the middle of Wangi and that. And we're like, there's no way. They will go back to killing livestock. And as indicated up there when they left minor pools, if we're going to release them, let's release them here. So when they go into communities, because they will, they're going to go into communities that we have been working with for 25 years. And we're going to be able to deal with that situation. And that's exactly what happened. It was just females. We released them with some wild males that came to our rehab. And the actual introduction was really simple and great to see. But the females did keep going into the communities and everything. But the response from the communities was phenomenal. And it's what we all invest in all these years. Laurie's been doing it for even longer than I have. The amount of investment you put into the communities. And there was no issue from the communities. They're like, yeah, well, it's just a goat. It doesn't matter. And actually, they were critical of the people that lost the goats were not working with a fellow partners that we have in there. There's an organisation called Softfoot Alliance that we work very closely with, and they work really in the community, teaching them how to herd their cattle and protect their cattle, their livestock and whatever, as well as permaculture programs. And the people that lost the livestock to the goats were not participating in those practices. So everybody was just like, it's your own fault. You don't blame the dogs. There's no issue with the dogs. Look how much we benefit from the dogs. You deal with your livestock as you've been told to deal with it, you know. So it was a hugely positive response. which we can compare to, again, the communities that we don't work with so closely, like this Angwa area, sort of right down on the Mozambique border, where these dogs we released into Mana pools, and then they just kind of went down the river and ended up again in this mixed sort of community wildlife area. At least 2 of the dogs got killed there, including the alpha female, and there's nothing, there's no talk, there's no negotiation, there's nothing you can do with those, because you haven't worked with those people for 25 years. And even in other areas of Wangi, the communities that we do engage with, where these dogs came from, that community we've been dealing with for over 20 years, with the kids coming to our bush camp and everything like that. So there was no issue of we're going to kill the dogs. It was just like, they're here. Can you come and help and do something about it? You know. So it really underlines the work that you have been supporting for so many years and the difference that it can make. And it's these long-term investments in local community and developing people like David and our other staff members that is so critical for the future. And we're only doing it because of your support. Thank you. Question?
Yeah.
Oh, there was, just hold on, because I know you ask long questions. There's another one at the back. No, go on. You've got the mic.
I've got the mic. No, in the last discussion, Jane mentioned how parvo affected the domestic dogs that are guarding the livestock and that the cheetah prey on. And then has parvo affected the painted dogs as well?
No, we haven't had parvo. We've had, in my 25 years, we've had one outbreak of rabies, really, to speak of. We might have had distemper, but it is a big issue. I mean, we were, for a number of years, we were also involved, and it only stopped with COVID, to be honest. Look, domestic dog vaccination programs. Cats. Let's not talk about lions, but cats. The number of cats in the villages is incredible, and you can't put a figure on it. But we're quite sure that the transmission of disease, rabies, distemper, is probably from cats and small mammals and things like that into the wildlife. But we haven't had parvo, and we have had disease for sure, and it's there as a ever present threat. Come on, you can ask your question. You got the mic now.
No, it's a short question actually.
All right,
how many of your dogs are collared, and at what rate can you get more collars to collar even more? And can you retrieve collars from your deceased dogs?
I've got a list like this long of dogs we've collared that are missing. Currently, there's about we've got 7 packs that we collar. Sometimes we'll collar all the dogs in that pack. So if it's a pack that we know is going to be going into these areas where there's a lot of poaching and that going on, snare set, we'll try and collar all of them with those protective collars. If it's a pack like in Mana pools, they don't run into snares and things, so then it's 1 collar, maybe 2 on the pack. Just to aid the monitoring and things like that. We stick largely to VHF collars, which are hellishly expensive for what they are, because they're just a very old technology and really basic, but they're still like $800 for the things, which is just ridiculous. When I started, probably when I started, they were like $300. They're now $800. GPS collars are like $2,000-$3,000. And I mean, we've put collars on they've failed a week later. The best GPS collar we've ever had lasted 10 months, and it should have lasted 22 months. So I'm very, very reluctant to get into that. You could fill this place. I bet Laurie's got stories as well. You could fill this place with, and David there is a biologist, we were talking about it, with conservationist biologists or whatever who have got stories about collars, and no more than 50% of those collars actually work effectively. So yeah, and it's hard to. I mean, what Jane was talking about. I mean, trying to fit. It's not like you can't just kind of whistle and they come. And this, I mean, I got into, you know, and you get the collar manufacturers, it's like, oh, it's failed. Okay, well, just send it back. You know, it took me a year to put the thing on, and now I don't know where it is because your collar's failed.
And are you still the only one that puts on the collars, or have you got a team now?
I'm still the only one. We're in a, I guess, fortunate compared to a lot of other countries where Zimbabwe, a non-veterinarian like myself, is allowed to dart and collar animals, but they're not issuing. I mean, I've been doing that 20 years. I'm almost one of the last non-veterinarians that they allowed. They will renew my license. But they won't give, like David, we would love to get on the course, but there's no point because they will not give him a license now. And they're tightening down on that. But we've got, there's a vet there, there's a wildlife vet now in national parks at Main Camp that we work closely with. And actually my friend and neighbour there at Softfoot Alliance, he's also got a license like myself. So there's 2 or 3 of us around there. But it's not easy. It's a very opportunistic. We can't trap dogs. Yeah. I don't know. We've never tried, to be honest. It's very opportunistic. So, you know. Is there any more questions? Yep.
Yeah, I have one question. Thank you so much. Great talk. Always very interesting to learn about wild dogs. So I think 2 positives. I think, firstly, it's great that Zimbabwe has such a great painted dog population, and also that Zimbabwe is coming back in many ways on the tourism front from in recent years. But I think obviously that's caused some issues as well. And we travel to Mana Pools quite frequently, and this year the dogs, the alpha female lost her litter again, and the numbers seem quite low there. And obviously, there's a number of reasons behind that. Some have surmised that with the rise in tourism and more commercial operators around den sites, it could be a question of limiting, people walking around and the sort of crush of tourism around wild dog den sites, given their vulnerability to other predators such as hyenas and lion. And I'm just wondering, my question is sort of how are you managing the uptick in tourism in Zimbabwe of recent times in terms of how it affects wild dog behavior? And are you working with a lot of the tour operators and tourism space to sort of limit the impact that people are going to be having on the wild dogs?
Yeah, you're really up to date, aren't you?
Yeah, we were there like a month ago.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was Mana Pools. It's any of you. I mean, a lot of Don's been, Dave, Stuff and Pee Wee've been there. There's many people. Peter's been there. Anyway, Mana Pools is right in the north of Zimbabwe, and it's got its own particular set of very, unusual circumstances. The main one being you can walk. You can fly there now, and you can get in your car or land. You may never have been anywhere near Africa in your life, and you're allowed to walk. How? And I never understand why there's not people just killed en masse every week. But it's actually very rare that happens. The majority of people walk with professional guides, and the majority of the professional guides in Zimbabwe are absolutely superb. I mean, we work very closely with our friends here at Wilderness Safaris, Africa Bush Camps, but there's a lot of independent operators as well. Again, the majority extremely professional. But I was there when that whole thing... So what happened... the main study pack on the floodplain, the main pack which we study on the floodplains of Mana Pools, gets so much pressure from people, and you want people to want to see the dogs, and we try and work with them, Zambezi Society and national parks and everything, and we've come up with protocols and guidelines and everything like that. But the pressure is immense. I mean, you obviously you saw it yourself. I mean, I was up there when that happened, and we knew that female was about to den. The alpha male had been we think was killed early in the year. Another male came in June. They were mating on the 9th of July. You do the math, and I'm like, they're going to have pups. This is like, we saw her on Wednesday. She was like massively pregnant. And we did the math, and we're like, she's going to have pups on Friday. She denned on Friday. We knew roughly where it was from the telemetry. And straight away, the operators, and one or two in particular, wanted to go to the den. Where's the den? We're not telling you where the den is. We just look, at least give it a month until the pups emerge from the den. Let them settle down. No, they're in there. They're in there. They're in there. That was Friday. Monday, she spent the whole day away from the den, and we decided there's something wrong here. She went back Tuesday morning, Tuesday afternoon. She was there. Wednesday, she was 2.5 kilometers from the den in a straight line and never went back. And we sent our researcher in with national parks now to see what was going on. Was it lions? What was happening there? All there was just footprints, all human footprints. And we know the individual right at the mouth of the den and everything like that. I cannot say with 100% that is why she abandoned the den. I say beyond reasonable doubt, then I think that's why she abandoned the den. And we're working with parks on it and trying to get absolutely most of the operators were outraged and up in arms about it. Controlling it is something else, because the only people that can control it are those same individuals, And they talk about pressure from their clients and stuff like this. That isn't true. Because if you explain to your client, this is the consequence and impact, they don't want to go to the den. We go to the den, but the dogs might die, but should we go? They're not going to go. But thankfully, the majority are phenomenally professional in what they do, and none more so than wilderness safaris. So you want to go to Mana Pools or Wangi or Zimbabwe or Botswana, wherever, go with wilderness safaris. Yep, another question.
Do you have consequences to people that do that? The poor
Not legal ones, no. No, but to be honest, from the professional guide association, and they are astonishingly professional. I mean, I've not worked in Botswana or Namibia, but I can only speak for Zimbabwe at how good the guides are. There's been a lot of talk, people losing their licenses, being fined, all sorts of things. I don't know. We've got a big meeting on the 25th of October when I get back, which will be kind of interesting, to see what happens.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that brings us to the end of Fall 2022 In-Person Expo. Well done, gentlemen. Way to bring it home. I just want to say a quick thanks to everybody for joining us this year. This is a completely new ballgame for all of us, moving from Mission Bay to here, changing up our invitee lists. So we want to know what you think. It's because of you that we do this, and it's for you that we do this, so it's important we do it well. You'll be getting a survey sometime in the next day or so, and love for you to fill that out and turn it back. If you just want to call me and give me your feedback, love to hear from you, or shoot me an email. I think most of you have my email. If not, I'm around. So we'd love to hear from you. Please let us know your thoughts. Let us know how today went. Let us know what you'd like to see in the future. Again, I just want to thank you all for being here. It's because of you that WCN's been around for 20 years and that WCN will continue to be around in the next 20 years and that we'll be able to support phenomenal conservationists like Cheetah Conservation Botswana, Cheetah Conservation Fund, who else am I? Painted Dog Conservation, all the conservation things, and that we'll be able to do that. And then last but not least, if you're sticking around town and you're not sure what to do tonight, I heard a couple people are going to grab a drink at Perry's about 2 doors down if that's of interest. No host, nothing formal, but just want you to know that there's always an option. Thank you again, everyone, and we'll see you mingling around.